Hey there, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this snowman card out of Simon Hurley's new sketch snowmen. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so here we have the adorable Stitch snowman, and there's a lot of cool little snowflakes in here, and there are coordinating dies. So we're going to be using a couple of these little snowmen. I'm going to use the one with the present and his little friend, and use one of the sentiments. And then I have here this embossing folder, which is also a Simon Hurley called, I think it says Sparkling Snow. Anyway, Spellbinders and Simon Hurley. It's one of my favorite embossing folders. And we're going to do a background technique. So I'm going to take Tropical Tango, which isn't a traditional Christmas color, but it's still a favorite. And I like to, when I'm doing this technique, I like to brayer the ink on. I feel like it gets the smoothest application, but you do you, and hopefully your brayer doesn't fall apart on you. This one has given me trouble since I got it, but that's okay. I still love it. I just fix it and carry on. So I'm making sure I get a nice thick application because I want it all nice and even. And then I'm going to carefully lay my paper down and close the lid and squish it right there and run it through my Vagabond. And once that's done, what I have is a beautiful background with beautiful white snowflakes. So, and you do want to clean your embossing folder, and with the Simon Hurley ink, all you need to do is use water. And it does kind of get all over it because obviously the paper is smaller than where I inked, so you want to make sure you get both sides clean. And then, so I'll clean that off and I'll set it aside to finish drying so we can carry on with our card. We've got our background ready to go. Next, I want to start building on that background. So I'm going to cut it down to the size that I want, which is 5 by 3 3/4. I'll just use my little trimmer because I wouldn't want to use a die after I had already embossed it because it would smush down my embossing. So I'm just cutting it down from several sides so that I'm happy with still the background and how it looks. All right, so I'm going to leave my ink pad out for now, but what I have here is just some hills that I made from a die from my stash. And I just made them out of white paper, and I'm going to go ahead and apply those hills here because I need a place for my snowmen to sit. So I'm going to just do kind of like more close to the bottom part because I do want to tuck my snowmen in. And I'm going to use liquid glue because I have used the embossing folder. We've got a bumpy surface we're working with. And I'll just trim off the excess. And I want to pop the second little hill up a little bit. Let's see if I can grab it off here. I'm kind of eyeballing where I want it to go and then deciding where to put the foam tape, leaving again a little bit of space. So I'll grab one of these foam strips from scrapbook.com. They are certainly handy. And I'll just lay it along and leave a little bit of space along the top. And what I'll do is I'll fill in the bottom later because I don't know exactly how big I want it yet, so I'm just leaving that long bottom for now. The die that I use to cut them is actually a slimline die, so it cuts a nice long little hill. All right, we'll pull the backer off. I'm going to set it down where I want it. Okay, so they're just kind of crossed over each other, and then I can trim off all the excess. And I will do that with my trimmer. And I'm just going to line up the bottom part with the blade and then just chop down and then flip it over and do the other side. Let's get that little bit of excess foam tape off of there so it's not in our way. What I'm going to do is tuck it back under where it should be. Because remember, we put it on kind of blindly. And then I'll go ahead and trim that off right to the edge. All right, now I've got my snow-covered hills here. I am going to add a little bit of foam tape on the underside. I'm going to trim off anything that didn't trim, but you can see that there's kind of an opening there. So let me just press everything down, and then I'll grab this little extra piece of foam tape and jimmy it in there so that the bottom has support as well. And just trim off the excess, and that's ready to go. And then I'm going to cut a piece of red cardstock at just a little over 3 3/4 and a little under 5, or a little over 5, so that I've got a nice thin red border, just to continue to make this Christmassy. And I'm going to use liquid glue to stick this down. Then we'll move on to our next part. So several parts to this. You could mass make these. Just make sure you have everything all cut out and things like that. Except for the coloring, of course. But the coloring on the snowmen is minimal because they're mostly white. So, all right, there's our background foundation here. And I'll go ahead and glue that down to a card base just to get that step over with. And let's see here. Yeah, I want to use a green card base. It's kind of hard to see, but this green coordinates nicely with that tropical tango. So we're using a non-traditional Christmas color and traditional Christmas colors. And let's just make sure that's on here straight, which is why I use the liquid glue. Just give it a press down and pray that I don't have ink all over my fingers, and I don't. So we did good. We'll move that aside and move on. And let me just pin up my glue again. I'm going to grab the stamp set now, and I'm going to grab my Misty tool. And I'm going to stamp out first the snowflakes. So I'm going to grab just some regular cardstock. I think this is accent opaque. And I'm going to choose a few of the snowflakes. I'm going to omit the largest ones. You could do the largest ones and put them on the inside if you want, but you'll see we need the space there. So we're just doing the small and the medium ones. And I will be using the coordinating dies to cut these out as well. So just set these down, making sure I'm leaving room for my dies so that I can cut them all out at the same time, because that makes life easier. Just set that aside. I'm going to pick them up, and I'm going to grab my anti-static powder tool and dust off my little paper, and I like to prime it before I open it, that way I don't get it everywhere. And I'm just going to use some Versamark and stamp those snowflakes down. And I've got here some alabaster white embossing powder. And I found that, I used to use clear, but I found that after watching Carrie Rhodes, and she uses white, and I do notice that the white resists ink better than the clear. I don't know why, but it does, so I'm going to use white. And two, sometimes your paper isn't as white as you wished it was. I don't know, like my hammer mill is darker than my accent opaque and so on and so forth. My Express It kind of has almost a blue hue to it. It's still white, but there's multiple shades of white. So we'll set that aside, and I'll grab my little scrap piece of paper here, and I'm just going to dump embossing powder all over it, making sure I'm getting all those snowflakes covered, and tap off, double checking, making sure there's full coverage. And now I've gone ahead and heat embossed those, and they're kind of hard to see because, yeah, it's white on white, but that's okay because we're going to do another step here. I'm going to grab this Tropical Tango ink, and I'm going to grab one of my blending buddies, the one for turquoise, and I'm just going to ink blend around these snowflakes. I'm going to tap off because I don't want it too dark, and that's going to make them pop. So I'm just kind of lightly, I'm not doing too heavy, but the reason I chose this is I want the color to coordinate with the background color. But you could do gray, you could do whatever you wanted, but this will definitely help them pop if you're trying to make them white. All right, those are ready to go. We'll go ahead and get those cut out off camera. You want to wipe off any excess ink. And yeah, let me just move stuff out of the way here. All right, I've got those all cut out off camera and off to the side. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our last step here, which is I'm going to stamp the snowmen out on some alcohol marker friendly paper. And I'm going to grab my snowmen or people, snow people. They could be snow ladies. You know, it really is up to you. I'm going to just grab my snow people. I'm going to make sure I have room to die cut them out. And I'll go ahead and stamp those down with some, I think I'm using ink on 3 today. I alternate between ink on 3 and Memento. Whatever's closest to me is what gets grabbed. They're both equal. And I'll stamp this a couple of times because it doesn't stamp, nothing stamps as dark as VersaFine Clear. So it's going to take a couple of stampings here to make sure I've got it nice and dark. And you don't have to do it nice and dark. You could do a what do you call it? No line watercoloring with these would be very cool too. But that's for another day. Today we're coloring with alcohol markers. And I will color on camera, but I will speed up the coloring considerably because it does take me a little while to try and stay in the lines and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. Move this aside. I'll clean off my stamps in a bit. And we're going to go ahead and get to coloring here. So I'm using my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blends. I'm using the dark red blend, the jade green, and I went so fast I don't know what the other color is. Oh, ice gray. And so I'm going to do a scarf in this jade green color. And we're just going from dark to light. I'm going to do, oh yeah, I needed an orange for the noses, carrots. And now I'm going to do this present in red. So I'm going with the dark, then the medium, and then I'll fill in with the light. And I'm going to do his little scarf the same way with dark, medium, light. Looking at where the shadows already are because it's super helpful. These drawn stamps are basically shaded already. I'm going to shade out the buttons, and then I'm just going to go ahead and shade the little snowmen with the lightest color of the ice gray blend. Just to give them a little bit of depth and dimension, shadows on their faces and things like that. Super easy coloring here. You don't have to go fancy with it at all. I'm just going to take my white gel pen and add just some little highlights here and there. And I'm going to use now the Astro pastes to glitter them up. So again, I'm speeding through this. I'm using a little silicone brush to lay this down. And I'm not trying to be careful. It dries clear, so I'm not too concerned about getting it elsewhere, except for I want to try and keep the colored glitter where it goes. So I used Bee Sting Tropical Tango. What's the white one called? I can't remember. And yeah, Orange Roar. All right, let's go ahead and put our card together. And off camera, I went ahead and cut and colored the stamped, embossed, and cut out the sentiment. And I'm going to go ahead and find some foam squares here and foam this guy up because I do want him popped up. And these are the low profile 1mm ones. I love that companies now are making multiple profiles as far as height goes, you know, because who doesn't love dimension on their card, but particularly in this fashion. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the backers off, and I'm doing that off camera because I'm throwing them on the floor. Who else does that? Throw them on the floor and say you're going to sweep them up later. Meanwhile, 19 of them walk off on your shoes or socks or bare feet in my case. Anyway, I can't be asked to lean all the way over to my trash can. Oops, I missed one. And the reason I do that too is that the mat that I use is silicone mat, and they tend to stick to it. It's hard to pick them up. So I like to do them kind of off away from my mat as best I can. All right, then we're going to pop him up, and I just need to pop the top half up on him. So I'm going to grab the little foam strip that I had and just add some foam just to the top. Sweetest little snowman. I love, love, love this release. There's so many goodies too in each of the stamp sets, so you get a great value for your money. And by the way, speaking of value, I'll have everything linked down below. These are my Ranger affiliate links, so I might make a couple of bucks off of it or a few cents or whatever, but it won't cost you anything extra. So here's our snow people. All we need to do is add our snowflakes and our sentiment. And I'm going to pop up the snowflakes, and I'm kind of just put them basically randomly. But don't those look pretty against that backdrop? I think they're gorgeous. So I'm using my bigger squares, the still kind of lower profile ones, so this doesn't poke up too much. And I'm going to put all the snowflakes down. I'm not going to put any on the snowbanks themselves because they're kind of too big for that. You could do the smaller ones if you wanted to. Let's do one here, and I have to keep in mind that I want to put my sentiment on there too. So I'm using these tiny little foam squares. Okay. I'm going to do my sentiment right there, and where am I going to do this other snowflake? Yeah, probably right there. And that's about it. This card's just about finished. I'm not going to add any embellishments. I feel like it has plenty. I'm just going to add some foam tape to the back of the sentiment. And again, this stamp set is called Sketch Snowmen. It's part of Simon Hurley's Christmas in July release. There we go. Hey, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me. And if you like this video, please consider giving me a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching, and have an awesome day.